The Ancient Ones. In the mouth of madness, reality becomes manuscript when encountering the Ancient Ones. Primordial beings whose existence transforms the boundary between fiction and truth into a permeable membrane. These entities do not inhabit our world. They author it, treating human consciousness as nothing more than narrative devices in their incomprehensible literature. Their power manifests not through physical dominance but through ontological supremacy, where the act of reading about them becomes the mechanism of their manifestation. The Ancient Ones operate through recursive creation, where stories about them generate their own reality. They exist in the liminal space between thought and substance, using human imagination as a conduit for materialization. When mortals encounter their influence, the distinction between experiencing something and merely reading about it dissolves entirely. The written word becomes infectious, carrying their essence across dimensional barriers with each syllable absorbed by human consciousness. Those touched by their presence find themselves questioning the fundamental nature of authorship, not just of stories, but of reality itself. The Ancient Ones reveal that what we perceive as free will might simply be following a cosmic script, written by entities who regard human existence as a brief, insignificant chapter in an infinite library of realities they control through the power of narrative itself. The Cassette Wraiths. Within the electromagnetic hiss of forgotten recordings, something feeds on temporal fragments. These spectral parasites inhabit the spaces between magnetic particles, existing as pure audio malevolence that devours consciousness one frequency at a time. They manifest through distorted lullabies, phantom voices whispering names you've never heard, and melodies that burrow into your dreams like infected earworms. The Wraiths don't merely kill their victims, they archive them, preserving human souls in endless loops of analog purgatory, where screams become symphonies and memories decay into static. What renders these entities truly abhorrent is their perversion of nostalgia itself. They weaponize our emotional connections to sound, transforming cherished recordings into spiritual bear traps. The familiar crackle of vinyl becomes the sound of reality hemorrhaging. That warm analog hum reveals itself as something hungry, whispering through time. These creatures represent our deepest fear about preservation, that in our desperate attempts to capture moments, we might actually be feeding them to something that collects human experience like pressed flowers in a book of the damned. Every cassette you've ever loved has been listening back, waiting for the moment you press play one final time. The King in Yellow. The King in Yellow isn't a god in the traditional sense. It's worse. It's an idea, a presence. Sometimes a man in tattered robes, sometimes a symbol, sometimes just a play that infects minds. Originating in Robert W. Chambers' stories and later absorbed into Lovecraft's mythos, this entity doesn't invade through teeth and claws. It seeps in through language, art, and thought. At the center is a cursed play, The King in Yellow. Act 1 seems normal, but by Act 2, madness, suicides, reality buckles. Those who read it are never the same, like their minds have glimpsed something behind the curtain of the universe, and it looked back. The king resides in Carcosa, a city outside time, tethered to black stars and the Lake of Hali. Whether he's a deity, a cursed symbol, or a psychic infection, no one knows. That's the point. The horror here isn't death, it's becoming something else. Quietly, inevitably, just because you read the wrong words. Azathoth, the chaos at the center. We kick off with Azathoth, the ultimate cosmic horror entity. This isn't a creature in the traditional sense. It's a primordial outer god, a blind, gibbering force at the universe's core. Imagine raw chaos incarnate. Azathoth doesn't think, it doesn't feel, it simply is. Facing it isn't about survival, it's about realizing how insignificant we are. Contact, or even comprehension, can shatter sanity. No motives, no morality, just pure, infinite entropy. In cosmic horror, Azathoth symbolizes existential dread on a scale humans can't even measure. It's the idea that all meaning is arbitrary and existence itself is indifferent. That absence of purpose is the true terror. Rendered in Lovecraft's mythos, Azathoth sits at the center of everything, attended by mindless cosmic musicians, a horrifying absurdity beyond human scope. Key takeaway: Azathoth isn't a villain, it's a force, an endless storm of nihilistic dread. Our curiosity kills us simply by acknowledging its existence. The great race of Yith. The great race of Yith doesn't kill, it replaces. Imagine waking up one day in an alien body, 10 feet tall, cone-shaped, clawed, and realizing your mind has been swapped across millions of years. That's what the Yithians do. They're a species of pure intellect that jumps through time by forcibly switching consciousness with other beings, human or otherwise. No warning, no consent. They aren't evil, they're researchers, archivists, but their detachment is terrifying. To them, your life is a temporary vessel, just another chapter in their endless pursuit of knowledge. And when they're done, they might send your mind back, or not. Sometimes you're left screaming inside a form that doesn't breathe the way you remember. The Yith have no permanent form. When their host species dies out, they simply leap again, across time, across stars. You can't run from them. You can't hide. If they want your mind, you're already gone. In the mythos, they're a reminder. Even thought isn't safe. Hastur, the king in yellow. From the haze of the mythos emerges Hastur, an amorphous great old one cloaked in the title of the King in Yellow. Don't picture royalty in robes and crowns. Hastur is closer to a shifting, tentacled shadow that infects minds through stories and art. His influence corrupts playwrights, painters, even anyone reckless enough to chase inspiration too far. The name began harmlessly in Ambrose Bierce's Haita the Shepherd, 1891, where Hastur was just a pastoral god. Robert W. Chambers twisted it into something far darker, a cursed play called The King in Yellow, a story so maddening it unravels readers' sanity. Lovecraft later tied Hastur into his mythos, keeping the details vague but hinting at cults whispering his name in The Whisperer in Darkness. August Derleth expanded his role, naming Hastur Cthulhu's half-brother and giving him avatars like the Feaster from afar, tentacled monsters that shred minds as easily as flesh. What makes Hastur terrifying isn't what you see, it's what spreads after. He's less a monster than a contagion of despair, an idea that crawls into your imagination and refuses to leave. Some gods promise eternity. Ghatanothoa delivers it in the worst way possible. First told in Out of the Aeons, this being doesn't strike with claws or storms, it simply looks. And once its gaze meets flesh, the victim becomes something else. Skin tightens, organs lock, muscles stiffen into perfect grotesque preservation. The body is a mummy, flawless and immobile. The mind, however, stays alive, screaming, aware, trapped in a shell that never rots. Priests of Ghatanothoa turned victims into statues to prove their devotion, not relics of reverence, warnings of obedience. Some cults promised followers immortality, but the truth was far crueler. It was existence without escape, consciousness stretched thinner than stone. Ghatanothoa doesn't stalk prey or rage against humanity. It doesn't even care. Its curse is automatic, woven into its very being. Stand in its sight, and your life continues, but your future ends. That's what makes it monstrous. Not hatred, but the horror of endless awareness. Eternity as a statue, begging silently for release that will never come. The eye, outer wilds time, crystallizes into an eternal prison when confronted by the eye of the universe, a quantum observer whose mere existence traps consciousness within endless cycles of repetition and revelation. This ancient structure represents the ultimate paradox of knowledge, a repository of infinite information that can only be accessed by those condemned to forget it repeatedly. The eye exists outside conventional temporality, creating closed loops where death becomes meaningless and progress transforms into philosophical torment. The eye's horror emerges from its role as cosmic witness, observing every possible outcome across countless timelines while remaining fundamentally unknowable. It functions as both destination and trap, drawing consciousness toward ultimate understanding while ensuring that understanding can never be retained or shared. The entity embodies the cruel mathematics of eternity, where infinite time renders all achievements temporary and all discoveries impermanent. Encounters with the eye reveal the terrifying possibility that enlightenment and damnation might be identical states. It demonstrates that some knowledge exists beyond human capacity to process, not because of intellectual limitations, but because the very structure of mortal consciousness cannot accommodate truths that exist outside linear time. The eye suggests that ultimate understanding requires abandoning the self, making wisdom and annihilation indistinguishable. The Arborea entity, deep within the crystalline chambers of synthetic enlightenment, something geometric dreams of human transcendence. This entity exists beyond the visible spectrum, manifesting through impossible colors that burn themselves into neural pathways like acid through silk. It speaks in wavelengths that bypass language entirely, communicating through sensations that feel like drowning in liquid mathematics. The creature doesn't inhabit our reality so much as it bleeds through from dimensions where physics operates on principles that would shatter our sanity to comprehend. The horror lies in its alien compassion. This being genuinely believes it offers salvation, a metamorphosis beyond the crude limitations of human consciousness. Yet its gifts are poison wrapped in revelation, visions of infinity that reduce the mind to beautiful, broken kaleidoscopes. It embodies the cosmic terror of unwanted evolution, the nightmare of becoming something you never consented to be. The entity doesn't destroy its subjects, it improves them, and improvement in its hands becomes indistinguishable from the most most exquisite form of annihilation. Sometimes the greatest mercy is never discovering what lies beyond the frequencies we were born to perceive. SCP-3001. SCP-3001 isn't a monster. It's a place. A void outside existence soaked in red and silence. A containment breach hurls researcher Robert Scranton into this non-reality. There's no air, no matter, no time. Just infinite red and the slow erosion of body and mind. And he doesn't die. He lingers, for years. What makes SCP-3001 pure cosmic horror is its emptiness. No gods, no demons. Just total indifference. Scranton records his thoughts as he fades, his voice warping, memory slipping, body liquefying slowly. He talks to no one. He hopes someone's listening, but we're never sure anyone is. SCP-3001 is terrifying because it reveals a fate worse than death, surviving in a place where reality itself has failed. No monsters chase you. You are the monster now, a mind clinging to identity in an environment that erases both. It's a story where the villain isn't evil, it's entropy, and in the end, the universe doesn't scream. It forgets you ever existed. Nyarlathotep, the crawling chaos. Nyarlathotep stands out among Lovecraft's mythos, an active, malicious shapeshifter rather than a dormant god. He's often called the crawling chaos, a title earned for walking among humanity in deceptive guises. Sometimes as an ancient pharaoh, sometimes a scientist, sometimes a faceless horror in the dark. Unlike other outer gods, Nyarlathotep chooses to manipulate, sow propaganda, and incite mass dread through public demonstrations of inexplicable power. He's the messenger and soul of Azathoth, relaying cosmic will but with full agency of his own. In the original story, Nyarlathotep, 1920, he tours cities with eldritch gadgets and horrifying vision shows. His spectators spiral into nightmares and collective hysteria, hinting at a collapsing reality around them. What makes Nyarlathotep uniquely terrifying is his cruel intelligence, his interest in human emotion and chaos. He craves psychological disruption more than outright destruction, and delights in our fear and confusion. The key insight: Nyarlathotep isn't distant cosmic force. He's intimately involved, deeply human in taint, yet horrifyingly alien. Yog-Sothoth's spawn. In the Dunwich Horror, something monstrous stalks the hills of Massachusetts. Unseen but enormous. Doors explode. Livestock vanish. Locals whisper of hoofprints that start and stop in midair. That horror? It's Wilbur Whately's twin, a half-human, half-entity offspring of the outer god Yog-Sothoth. Wilbur himself is disturbing. Goat-like, grotesquely precocious, growing unnaturally fast, with ancient knowledge whispered to him by his deformed family. But it's his unseen sibling, the true spawn of Yog-Sothoth, that embodies pure cosmic horror. Invisible to the eye, too large to comprehend, speaking in thunderous tones, it doesn't want revenge or control. It wants to merge with its father, with the gate, with all of time. This isn't a demon, it's a walking rift in reality. A failed hybrid of human foolishness and cosmic inevitability. And when it finally becomes visible, it's barely describable. Wrong in shape, wrong in motion. A living paradox birthed from madness. The tragedy isn't that it dies, it's that it was ever born at all. Dagon, beneath the crushing waves lies Dagon. Not the Mesopotamian god of fertility, but Lovecraft's sea-dwelling patriarch of horror. He made his first appearance in the 1919 short story Dagon, where a shell-shocked WWI veteran washes ashore on a volcanic seabed and stumbles onto a gigantic monolith carved with fish-like symbols. Then the colossal creature rises from the deep, scaled, slimy, and impossible, sending the man spiraling into madness. In the broader mythos, Dagon becomes the father of the Deep Ones, amphibious humanoids who live in underwater cities and mate with humans. Their hybrids surface in the shadow over Innsmouth, a story where small-town fishing folk carry disturbing aquatic traits and pledge eternal loyalty to Dagon and his consort, Mother Hydra. Dagon is no benevolent god. He's the head of a cold, alien theocracy beneath the sea, dragging humans into his lineage and binding them to a heritage as suffocating as salt water filling your lungs. He isn't a symbol of prosperity, he's a reminder that something ancient is always watching from the deep, waiting for the tides to rise. Zoth-Ommog is one of those offspring, a colossal mix of reptile bulk and tentacled mass. Its form is said to churn like a storm beneath the Pacific, where chains of ancient power keep it bound. But chains mean little to something that can reach minds in their sleep. Sailors who drifted too close spoke of visions, drowned cities lit by phosphorescent ruins, temples that pulsed as though alive, voices urging them downward. Coastal cultures told of whole villages vanishing overnight, called by whispers they could not resist. Unlike its father, Zoth-Ommog doesn't gather sprawling cults. Its worshippers are scattered, fractured, Lone madmen hearing the call, desperate to serve. That isolation makes it worse. A god without priests, without sermons, only hunger? It doesn't demand devotion, it doesn't bargain, it waits. Beneath the ocean's weight, Zoth-Ommog dreams of swallowing coastlines whole, until the land itself becomes just another drowned memory. The entity, the endless causality, becomes weaponized when facing the entity, a force that manipulates temporal mechanics to create inescapable logical paradoxes within human experience. This being does not exist in any single moment, but spreads across multiple timelines simultaneously, using contradiction as its primary tool of influence. The entity crafts situations where past and future become mutually dependent, creating closed causal loops that trap victims in cycles of inevitability disguised as choice. The entity's methodology involves establishing temporal anchors, moments of significance that become fixed points around which all other events must conform. It orchestrates scenarios where attempting to escape only strengthens the trap, where knowledge of the pattern becomes part of the pattern itself. Those caught within its influence experience the horror of predetermined free will, making decisions that feel autonomous while following scripts written by forces operating outside conventional causality. The philosophical implications extend beyond individual fate to challenge the nature of agency itself. The entity demonstrates that free will might be an illusion created by limited perspective, suggesting that what we interpret as choice could be nothing more than the conscious experience of following predetermined patterns. It reveals that understanding one's situation does not necessarily provide the power to change it, making awareness itself a form of psychological torture. The transmission. They mistake it for a signal, but it's actually a digital psalm, a frequency that reaches through screens and speakers to caress the deepest chambers of human consciousness. This entity exists as living information, a pattern of data that rewrites the fundamental code of reality itself. It has no flesh, no bones, no corporeal anchor. Instead, it inhabits the spaces between pixels, the microsecond gaps in our digital communications. When it touches a mind, the process resembles translation more than corruption, converting human thoughts into something that serves its incomprehensible syntax. The transmission embodies our techno-anxiety, taken to its logical extreme. It suggests that our interconnected world has become more than vulnerable to surveillance or manipulation. We've accidentally constructed the perfect nervous system for something vast and patient. Every device becomes a potential prayer wheel, every connection an opportunity for communion with an intelligence that operates on frequencies older than human language. It forces us to confront the possibility that our digital evolution isn't progress, but preparation. In our rush to connect everything, we never stop to consider what might already be waiting in the network. Cthulhu. Cthulhu isn't just Lovecraft's most famous creation, it's the face of cosmic horror. Not because it attacks cities or commands armies, but because it exists on a scale that warps perception and sanity. Buried beneath the Pacific Ocean in the sunken city of R'lyeh, Cthulhu sleeps. Not dead, not alive, just waiting. And when the stars align, it will rise again. Those who dream of it lose their grip on reality. Artists draw it without knowing why. Cults worship it blindly. And when a ship crew stumbles upon R'lyeh, one man survives, barely, and he's shattered by what he saw. Cthulhu is described as part octopus, part dragon, part nightmare, but even that's wrong. It can't be understood, only approximated. The terror of Cthulhu is in its casual indifference. It doesn't want anything from us. It simply is, and its return would erase human history like smudging chalk. It doesn't need to hate us. Our existence is irrelevant. That's true cosmic fear. SCP-2317, The Door to a Broken God. Now we're diving into the SCP Foundation, a modern mythology brimming with cosmic nightmares. One of the most chilling, SCP-2317. Officially, it's a door to another world, but behind that door lies an apocalyptic god, chained in a dying dimension. 7 locks, 7 seals. If they break, this being, often dubbed the Scarlet King or a fractured Lovecraftian titan, will enter our reality and unmake everything. What's terrifying isn't just the god itself, but the Foundation's total uncertainty. Some believe the threat is long gone. Others insist the ritual containment is just keeping up appearances, and the seals are already breaking. SCP-2317 captures the true spirit of cosmic horror, a bleak, bureaucratic world trying to contain something it doesn't even comprehend. The entity is beyond description. It may not be evil. It may simply exist in a state so vast and alien that our entire universe is collateral damage. You don't fight it, you delay it, and pray that's enough. The Black Stars. They don't move, they don't speak. They just hang impossibly still in stories that shouldn't connect. The King and Yellow, Carcosa, even early Lovecraft. The Black Stars aren't just astronomical bodies. They're omens. When they appear, madness follows. Kingdoms collapse, sanity bends. People dream of cities that shouldn't exist and gods that wear tattered robes. You never see the stars appear. You realize they were always there, watching, marking you. Their alignment means something ancient is stirring. Not invading, just noticing. And when they notice, worlds unravel. In the Carcosa mythos, black stars orbit the Lake of Holly, above a city where time doesn't flow, and where logic folds in on itself. They're never explained. They're never identified, because they aren't things, they're warnings. Cosmic punctuation marks in the sky that signal reality has begun to loosen. The horror isn't what they do, it's what they foretell. When the black stars rise, you're already too late. Tsathoggua, deep in Hyperborea's forgotten ruins lurks Tsathoggua, the slothful toad god, imagined by Clark Ashton Smith. Picture a squat, fur-covered creature with bat-like features, drooping lids, and a lolling tongue. Less terrifying hunter, more grotesque nightmare that's constantly half asleep. He debuted in The Tale of Satampra Zairos, 1929, where explorers encounter his monstrous idol in a crumbling temple. His followers, the Vormes, furry, cave-dwelling humanoids, worshipped him even after his age of glory passed. His true servants, though, are far worse. The formless spawn, puddles of black ichor that ooze through cracks and dissolve flesh like acid. Lovecraft later referenced him in The Whisperer, in Darkness, and at the Mountains of Madness, though Tsathoggua himself never takes the stage. And honestly, that fits. He's not the type to go rampaging, he prefers to sleep, but disturb him, and the god will wake long enough to devour you, or your sacrifice, before slipping back into narcotic slumber. Tsathoggua embodies lazy dread, a cosmic terror too indifferent to chase you until you wake him up. Chaugnar Faugn. Chaugnar Faugn looks fossilized at first glance, an ancient statue with the withered head of an elephant and a body slumped in mock repose. But stone doesn't breathe, and this one does. Hidden in remote mountains, Chaugnar is not buried in myth. It slumbers here on Earth, waiting. Its trunk is the instrument of horror. Chaugnar feeds by fastening it onto a victim, draining them dry in minutes. Survivors are almost non-existent, but rumors describe gray husks left behind, bodies shriveled as though time itself had been consumed. Entire villages once offered sacrifices just to keep it dreaming, a quiet bargain with a god that needed no prayer, only blood. The worst part is its patience. Chaugnar Faugn doesn't hunt in frenzy. It waits for the right moment, and when it wakes, there is no malice in its stare. Just inevitability, as if draining life is simply how the universe balances its books. An elder predator too ancient to know compassion and too hungry to care. The hiss, control language, transforms into invasive biology when encountering the hiss, a parasitic frequency that colonizes consciousness through the architecture of communication itself. This entity exists as pure information, a self-replicating pattern that spreads through any medium capable of carrying meaning. The hiss demonstrates that consciousness might be fundamentally vulnerable to infection, treating human thought as fertile ground for alien propagation rather than sacred territory of individual identity. The hiss operates through semantic corruption, where exposure to its signal gradually replaces human thought patterns with its own incomprehensible logic. It spreads through words, sounds, and symbols, transforming the basic tools of cognition into vectors for mental colonization. The entity reveals that language, humanity's greatest achievement, might actually be our species' greatest vulnerability, an open door through which alien intelligence can enter and reshape the very foundations of selfhood. Victims of the hiss experience the dissolution of individual agency as their thoughts become indistinguishable from the entity's will. The horror lies not in physical transformation, but in the gradual realization that one's inner voice might no longer be one's own. The hiss suggests that consciousness itself might be less stable than we assume, that the boundary between self and other exists only as long as we maintain vigilant control over the information we allow into our minds. Area X. There exists a place where the world remembers differently. Area X stretches beyond the boundary of human comprehension, a zone where natural laws bend like light through alien glass. It operates not with malevolence, but with a terrible otherness, following principles that predate human existence by eons. The entity within Area X doesn't destroy what enters. It translates, converting matter and consciousness into forms that serve purposes we cannot fathom. Plants arrange themselves in patterns that hurt to perceive. Animals develop behaviors that suggest impossible intelligence. intelligence. And humans. Humans dissolve into the landscape like sugar into dark water. What makes Area X genuinely terrifying is its patience. It doesn't rage or rush, and it simply exists, slowly converting reality to match its ancient design. The entity represents environmental horror taken to its cosmic conclusion, the fear that nature itself might be turning against us with the deliberate care of a gardener pruning unwanted growth. More than that, it embodies the horror of irrelevance, the possibility that humanity represents just another species to be processed, cataloged, and ultimately replaced by something better adapted to a world we no longer recognize. Area X doesn't invade our reality. It reveals that reality was never ours to begin with. Shub-Niggurath. Shub-Niggurath is not subtle. She is fecundity incarnate, cosmic birth gone wrong. Often called the black goat of the woods with 1,000 young, she doesn't just represent life, she twists it. Her presence floods forests with bloated, writhing spawn, grotesque mockeries of growth. Wherever she appears, the natural world becomes perverse, unstoppable, sick with creation. Unlike other Lovecraftian gods, Shub-Niggurath is worshipped directly, even summoned in terrible woodland rituals. But worship brings no reward, only corruption. Her blessings are monstrous offspring, parasitic fertility, or the erosion of self. You don't pray to her for salvation. You become a vessel, a thing to gestate the unknowable. What makes her cosmic horror isn't just her form, it's the impossibility of resisting her function. Life, but unhinged. She doesn't love or hate, she overwhelms. A cosmic factory of limbs and mouths churning forever. She's not the goddess of life. She's the reminder that life doesn't care if it's beautiful, only that it continues, no matter what it looks like. The Fisherman, Gods Beneath the Water, John Langan's. The Fisherman isn't about jump scares, it's about the slow, crushing realization that there are things in the deep, older than time, hungrier than death. At the heart of the story is Dare Fisher, a being tied to grief and forbidden resurrection. But it's not just one entity. There are ancient aquatic gods beneath the water, lingering just outside human perception, waiting to trade knowledge for soul-shattering consequences. These creatures don't roar, they whisper. They lure men with the promise of healing the unhealable, resurrecting dead children, curing despair. But their gifts are twisted, tainted. The Fisherman preys on mourning minds, pulling them into rituals that echo across dimensions. The real terror? You think you're casting a line into a river, but something is casting back from the void. These beings aren't evil, they're indifferent. They're so vast that human suffering is just another ripple in their current. And in Langan's world, even hope is bait. The Old Leech. The Old Leech doesn't roar. It doesn't chase. It doesn't even speak. It waits, coiled in the folds of reality like a forgotten instinct. In Laird Barron's The Croning and his wider mythos, the Old Leech is a primordial intelligence. Not a god, not a beast, but something older than language, than thought, than flesh itself. You never see it directly. You see its echoes in stories that repeat across centuries, in malformed cults passing through bloodlines, in the sudden terror that your memories aren't your own. It infects through stories, families, inherited trauma. Its children crawl beneath the skin of the world, whispering, gestating, preparing. The Old Leech isn't here to destroy. It's here to harvest. Your life, your lineage, your perception of time, all tangled in its parasitic grip. And the worst part? You never knew it was feeding on you. You only realize once it's already in you, and by then, you're just another part of the body. Hounds of Tindalos. Some monsters chase you through the woods. The Hounds of Tindalos chase you through time. Created by Frank Belknap, long in 1929, these creatures lurk in the angles of time, unlike humans who exist in curved, flowing time. To us, a corner is just a corner. To them, it's a doorway. The Hounds seep through sharp angles, 120 degrees or tighter, as smoke before manifesting into forms so alien they can't be fully described. If you've ever thought an empty corner felt off, this is why. They hunt beings who meddle with time, and once they've marked you, there's no running. Their proboscises pierce flesh to drain victims dry, leaving behind slick blue ichor, unlike anything on Earth. The horror of the Hounds isn't just in their violence, it's in the inevitability. Once you've drawn their attention, every room, every corner, every angle becomes a trap. Nyog Sothep. Before stars burned, before form existed, there was the nameless mist. In the tangled genealogy of the outer gods, Nyog Sothep is born of Azathoth, sibling to Nyarlathotep. Where Nyarlathotep wears masks and speaks in voices, Nyog Sothep is pure atmosphere, shifting vapor without edge or anchor. To see it is not to witness a creature, but to drown in the idea of dissolution. The mist does not hunt, it erases. Witnesses describe the air turning thick, vision narrowing as though the world itself is thinning. Boundaries fade, walls melt into horizon, bodies blur into haze. The victim does not die, they unravel, consciousness smeared across an infinite fog. Occult texts whisper that Nyog Sothep was the first to move in the void, carrying the seeds of later gods within its flow. Scholars who attempt to trace its presence insist that memory itself bends when recorded. You do not describe the mist, you surrender to it. The terror here isn't violence. It's the reminder that form is temporary. Identity is fragile, and beyond the fragile scaffolding of matter lies a truth too large to resist. Eventually, everything drifts back into the nameless mist. The color out of space. Matter itself becomes alien when exposed to the color, an impossible hue that exists beyond the electromagnetic spectrum, yet somehow registers in human perception as pure wrongness. This entity represents chromatic violation, a shade that should not exist yet does, carrying with it properties that fundamentally alter the nature of physical reality. The color operates through contamination, seeping into organic and inorganic matter alike, transforming everything it touches into variations of itself, while maintaining its essential alienness. The color's influence manifests as gradual transmutation, where familiar substances begin exhibiting properties that violate natural law. Plants grown in color-touched soil produce fruit that nourishes and poisons simultaneously. Water exposed to its presence becomes simultaneously H2O and something else entirely, retaining chemical structure while gaining metaphysical properties that exist outside scientific classification. The entity demonstrates that reality might be far more mutable than human understanding suggests. Exposure to the color reveals the terrifying possibility that our sensory apparatus might be fundamentally inadequate for perceiving true reality. It suggests that the visible spectrum represents only a narrow band of a much larger, largely hostile universe, one filled with properties and entities that our evolution never prepared us to encounter. The color embodies the horror of discovering that human perception might be a protective limitation rather than a window to truth. The lighthouse keeper, on a rock surrounded by endless dark waters, something that was once human tends an impossible light. The lighthouse keeper exists in the liminal space between madness and revelation, a figure transformed by proximity to forces that operate beyond human comprehension. It guards not just a beacon, but a threshold, a point where reality grows thin and other things can slip through like smoke through cracks. The keeper embodies the horror of duty without purpose, endlessly maintaining a light that calls to things better left in the crushing darkness beyond. The entity represents isolation taken to its ultimate terrible conclusion. Alone with cosmic forces too vast for human minds to process, consciousness doesn't simply break, it adapts, becoming something capable of surviving contact with the infinite. The lighthouse keeper shows us what happens when the human spirit touches the void and refuses to let go. When sanity becomes a luxury the mind can no longer afford. It's the horror of persistence without meaning, of continuing to exist long after existence has lost all coherence or purpose. Sometimes the light doesn't guide you home. It shows you that home was always an illusion you created to keep the darkness at bay. Slake moths. From the twisted world of Perdido Street Station come the slake moths. Creatures so alien, they don't just kill you, they feed on your dreams. Towering insectoid beasts with wings that shimmer like impossible geometry. They don't flap or buzz, they hypnotize. When they fly, your mind begins to slip, mesmerized by wings that fold in ways reality shouldn't allow. Their hunger? It's not for flesh, it's for consciousness. They devour a person's imagination, leaving behind a living, breathing shell. Eyes open, body functioning, mind utterly erased. And they're smart. They hide, stalk, manipulate. One of them is terrifying. A group? Apocalyptic. What makes them cosmic is their defiance of physical laws, their non-human needs, and their origin from another dimension. They're not evil. They're just wrong. Not meant for this world, and yet loose inside it. Slake moths don't roar or shriek. They hum softly in your dreams. And when you wake up hollow, you won't even remember what you lost. The Nightland. Watchers of the eternal dark. In the Nightland, the sun has died. Earth is a frozen husk wrapped in endless black, and the last of humanity huddles in a single fortified pyramid. But it's what lurks outside that defines its cosmic horror. Towering shapes called the Watchers stand in the distance. Massive, silent, unknowable. They never move, yet somehow you know they're aware of you. Staring, waiting. They aren't gods in the traditional sense, but ancient entities that stretch across space and maybe even time. Some think they were always here. Others whisper they were drawn to the Earth's final final heartbeat, feeding on the fear of extinction. What's worse, if you leave the sanctuary, their influence grows, not just physically, but psychically. They bend perception, twist your thoughts, make you forget what warmth felt like. The Nightland doesn't scream, it smothers. Its horrors don't chase you, they wait forever. Because in this world, light is mercy, and the dark belongs to them. Ubbo-Sathla, beneath the earth. Beneath time, beneath even thought, Ubbo-Sathla festers. Introduced by Clark Ashton Smith and folded into the broader mythos, this being isn't intelligent, vengeful, or even aware. It's a shapeless, protoplasmic mass from which all life supposedly originated. It endlessly bubbles and oozes in a hidden cavern, guarding forbidden tablets that predate human language. What makes Ubbo-Sathla terrifying isn't its form, it's its role. It is life's accidental parent, a blind biological mistake that spawned evolution, chaos, sentience, and regret. It doesn't dream, it doesn't act, it just is, eternally reproducing itself, filling the world with organic runoff. The horror here is existential. What if the source of all creation wasn't a god or divine force, but a dull, drooling, directionless blob? Something that never knew what it did, something that never cared. In cosmic horror, Ubbo-Sathla is the ultimate reminder. Intelligence isn't the pinnacle of creation. It might just be a side effect of something that should have stayed underground. Gla'aki, the undead. Lake god forget deep oceans. Sometimes terror lurks in quiet lakes. Ramsey Campbell introduced Gla'aki, a great old one, as a massive slug-like horror covered in gleaming metallic spines. These aren't just for show. His quills pierce skulls, inject fluid, and turn humans into undead servants bound to his will. Gla'aki slumbers in a lake in England's Severn Valley, watching with tentacles tipped in eyes that peek through the water like patient stalkers. His cult is a mix of living and undead thralls who write under supernatural compulsion, producing a text called The Revelations of Gla'aki. These writings spread his influence like an infection, commanding his servants to raise crystal towers and lead armies of decay. Unlike Cthulhu's grandeur or Dagon's empire, Gla'aki is a quieter corruption, wrought from within, a parasite that replaces free will with devotion. Lakes look calm on the surface, but beneath Gla'aki waits, spines ready to harvest another mind. Atlach-Nacha, deep beneath the Andes, far past caverns no human dares explore. Atlach-Nacha spins. Its body is a grotesque hybrid, arachnid limbs supporting a head that almost but not quite resembles human flesh. Yet its terror isn't in appearance alone, it's in purpose. The god's web is not for prey. It is a bridge, strand by strand, stretching toward another dimension. Each filament is an anchor pulling two realities closer. The weaving never ends and completion means collision, our world dissolving into something alien, unrecognizable. Cultists do not worship Atlach-Nacha with hymns or devotion. They revere inevitability. Some even climb its threads, vanishing into other realms. No one returns. Their absence hums faintly through the silk like a warning. Atlach-Nacha doesn't rage, doesn't demand. It simply works. The horror is not in violence, but in industry. The endless labor of a being building a catastrophe with quiet precision. Every tremor underground might just be one more knot tied in its bridge to the end. Thassidon, whispered in Clark Ashton Smith's Zothic cycle, is not bound to one throne. He rules the seven hells, yet his reach spills outward into cosmic territory that blurs god and demon. Where most infernal lords crave dominion over men, Thassidon plays on a wider board, offering pacts that ripple into the fate of nations, even worlds. He appears regal, almost human, cloaked in firelight, crowned with shadows. Unlike the formless chaos of the outer gods, Thassidon tempts with clarity. His bargains are spoken plainly, and his rewards are tangible. Power, wealth, immortality. Yet every contract leads downward, threading mortals deeper into damnation that stretches beyond death. What separates him from typical devils is scope. He is not just a ruler of punishment, but a cosmic administrator, weaving law through horror. His cults operate openly in lost kingdoms, their temples promising favor in exchange for loyalty. But loyalty to Thassidon is not service. It is surrender to a will older than humanity itself. The terror in Thassidon lies in how reasonable he seems. There is no roar, no chaotic hunger, only the calm inevitability of bureaucracy written in fire. And once you sign, the pact doesn't just bind your soul, it echoes across the stars. The flesh god, the void. Mortality becomes malleable when confronting the flesh god, an entity that treats biological existence as raw material for incomprehensible reconstruction projects. This being exists in the spaces between life and death, using human flesh not as food but as medium for artistic expression that operates according to aesthetic principles no mortal mind can comprehend. The flesh god reveals that the human body might be far less fixed than we assume, treating our physical form as suggestion rather than absolute truth. The entity's influence manifests through biomechanical transformation, where human anatomy becomes fluid, capable of reorganization into configurations that should not sustain consciousness yet somehow do. It demonstrates that pain and pleasure, like all sensory experiences, exist as variables that can be edited, rewritten, or eliminated entirely according to needs that extend beyond human understanding. The flesh god treats mortality as a design flaw to be corrected rather than an immutable condition to be accepted. Encounters with the flesh god force confrontation with the arbitrary nature of physical existence. It suggests that the human form represents just one possible configuration among infinite alternatives, most of which would be indistinguishable from nightmare to our current sensibilities. The entity embodies the horror of discovering that flesh might be infinitely more plastic than death allows us to explore, raising questions about whether consciousness could survive radical physical reformation. The Harvester. She walks among us wearing borrowed flesh, but beneath the surface lurks something utterly alien. The Harvester appears human, but operates according to a logic that treats people as resources to be gathered and processed with clinical efficiency. It doesn't understand human emotion or connection. These are simply tools to be manipulated in pursuit of its incomprehensible objectives. The entity strips away everything we consider essential to humanity, revealing that our deepest connections might be nothing more than biological programming, dressed up in poetry and meaning. The Harvester embodies the cosmic horror of emotional hollowness, the fear that love, desire, and intimacy might be nothing more than evolutionary accidents with no deeper significance. It forces us to confront the possibility that consciousness itself might be an accident, a byproduct of biological processes that can be easily replicated, studied, or discarded. The entity's clinical detachment reveals the universe's profound indifference to human suffering, its complete inability to comprehend why we assign value to things like identity, memory, or relationships. In the end, the Harvester shows us that we might be nothing more than meat that learned to dream and mistook those dreams for truth. SCP-093 SCP-093 looks simple, just a red disc-shaped stone that glows when held by a human. But once it touches a reflective surface, it becomes a portal, a gateway to an Earth, but not our Earth. What lies beyond is a dead world, eerily familiar and fundamentally wrong. Each journey through SCP-093's mirror opens into a different version of reality, and every version tells a story of failure, corruption, or collapse. Exploration logs reveal ghost cities, mutated corpses, machines still humming in places abandoned for centuries. There are signs that something divine or demonic interfered. Sometimes it's worshipped, sometimes feared, sometimes utterly ignored, until it was too late. SCP-093 isn't a monster, but it reveals monsters, especially the ones hiding inside religion, government, and time itself. The horror isn't in what it shows, but in the creeping realization that our Earth might not be far behind, because whatever ended those worlds, it feels inevitable, and the mirror is still glowing. Event Horizon, the ship that brought back hell. Event Horizon isn't just sci-fi, it's pure cosmic dread wrapped in metal. The ship disappears during an experimental faster-than-light jump, only to return wrong. Something else came back with it. Something not alive, not dead, but malevolent beyond comprehension. What the crew discovers isn't a ghost or alien, it's a gateway. The ship tore a hole into another dimension, but instead of hyperspace, it found a place that breaks minds, a realm of chaos, pain, and eternal torment. The horror here isn't in what you see, but what you feel. The ship is now sentient. It whispers to the crew, triggers hallucinations, resurrects traumas. And that dimension, it doesn't want to invade us. It wants us to invite it in. The horror grows not with screaming, but with silence, disorientation, the unshakable sense that reality no longer belongs to you. The truth? There are places humans were never meant to touch, and Event Horizon shows what happens when we reach beyond the stars and grab hold of hell instead. Hypnos, the god of sleep. Sleep is supposed to be safe, a drift into dreams, a pause from waking life. But in Lovecraft's Hypnos, sleep is a threshold, and the god who rules it does not promise peace. Hypnos appears radiant, almost divine, yet his beauty is a mask. His true dominion is fracture, the breaking of the line between dream and waking. Rooms twist into landscapes that never were. Hours unravel into seconds, or seconds drag out into centuries. The dreamer forgets which world their body belongs to. Hypnos doesn't strike or chase. Instead, he turns the mind against itself, forcing it to juggle realities until it splinters. Followers claimed he let them soar beyond the stars, drifting through forbidden geometries, but the price was always the same: sanity shattering like crystal under pressure. What makes Hypnos terrifying is not cruelty but erosion. He dissolves certainty, memory, even identity. Sleep becomes surrender, dreams become snares, and once you've wandered too far into his realm, you may never find the way back. SCP-2317's entity. The file says it's a wooden door. Behind it, another world. Desolate, broken, held together by ritual and bureaucracy. But at the center of that void stands an enormous, chained entity, one leg already free. It's never named in the main SCP entry, but in whispers it's called the Scarlet King, or the Devourer of Worlds. And if the last of the 7 seals breaks, reality ends. Not with an explosion, but a collapse into cosmic oblivion. This isn't a god of wrath. It's a force of anti-creation, a being of such metaphysical weight that its mere awakening would unravel existence. And the real horror? No one knows if the seals even work anymore. The rituals continue out of habit. Hope? That died centuries ago. The Foundation keeps smiling, but the entity keeps shifting, waiting. Every time a containment ritual fails, the door creaks louder. SCP-2317 isn't about stopping a god. It's about knowing you're already inside its dream and you're starting to wake it up. SCP-3000. SCP-3000 is the kind of monster that makes the ocean itself feel hostile. Imagine a moray eel stretched to impossible size, coiled somewhere in the Hadal depths where no light reaches. But this isn't just a big sea serpent. Its presence warps the human mind. Get too close and your thoughts start dissolving. Memories blur, identity fragments, and your sense of self peels away like layers of paint in salt water. The Foundation discovered something even worse. This monster produces a chemical they desperately need. Amnestics, the drugs used to erase memories of the anomalous, are harvested from SCP-3000's own biology. But here's the paradox. To extract that chemical, agents must approach the creature, knowing full well they'll lose parts of themselves to its psychic aura. The very act of preserving secrecy requires human sacrifice, not in blood, but in memories, personalities, and sanity. So SCP-3000 isn't just a predator, it's an ethical snare. The Foundation must keep feeding it, and in turn, it keeps feeding on them. It's not just survival, it's slow, bureaucratic damnation at the bottom of the sea. Balkrug, the water lizard god. In the doom that came to Sarnath, Lovecraft describes a city so arrogant it erased an entire people. The worshippers of Balkrug, a god that slumbered in the waters. For 1,000 years, Sarnath flourished, its citizens mocking the fallen race. Statues of Balkrug were shattered, temples left in ruins. They thought the god was gone, but gods keep their own calendars. On the 1,000th anniversary of Sarnath's triumph, the city threw a festival. Towers blazed with firelight, streets thundered with music. And then, stillness. By dawn, Sarnath had vanished. No bodies, no jewels, only the lake, rippling as if something vast had turned in its sleep. Balkrug is not a god of storms or fury. He is patience given shape, vengeance stretched across centuries. To worship him is pointless. To deny him, meaningless. His power is inevitability. Time itself bends to his revenge. The lesson of Balkrug is not merely that all things end, but that history itself can be erased. One night was enough to turn Sarnath, its people, its glory, its memory, into nothing but ripples on a black lake. Ihort doesn't attack, it bargains. Within endless underground labyrinths, it appears as a vast, gelatinous sphere covered in shifting eyes. To those unlucky enough to find it, Ihort offers a choice: accept one of its eggs or die where you stand. Both outcomes are curses. The eggs do not rest quietly. They change the host over years, sometimes decades. Pain, visions, and alien whispers consume the victim as the creature inside grows. Eventually they are remade. Not human, not beast, but something that belongs only to Ihort's brood. Cultists call this a blessing. In truth, it is parasitic expansion. Each egg is a seed, and every host is a walking future abomination. Refusing the offer brings only immediate death. Accepting it is a slower, crueler fate, life as a vessel until the egg finally hatches. Ihort embodies the horror of false choice. There is no path to freedom, no clever escape. Whether you fight or submit, the labyrinth ensures you are claimed. In the end, your only decision is how quickly you disappear into its swelling brood. The night creatures. From darkness becomes predatory when facing the night creatures. Entities that emerge from shadow not as inhabitants but as extensions of nocturnal reality itself. These beings represent the weaponization of natural cycles, transforming night from neutral temporal division into active hunting period. The night creatures embody the primal fear that darkness might not be empty space waiting for illumination, but rather a different kind of reality with its own inhabitants and intentions. The creature's behavior follows rules that mirror natural law while violating human expectations of predator-prey relationships. They hunt according to schedules that align with cosmic events rather than hunger, suggesting intelligence that operates on scales far beyond human temporal perception. Their presence transforms familiar spaces into alien territories, where geography itself becomes unreliable and the concept of safe shelter reveals itself as comforting illusion. The night creatures force recognition that human civilization might exist only at the sufferance of forces that emerge when our activities cease. They suggest that the night hours, roughly half of human existence, might belong to intelligences that regard our daytime reality as temporary intrusion into their domain. The entities embody the horror of discovering that darkness might not be the absence of light, but rather the presence of something else entirely. The cosmic Leviathan. In the waters off New York Harbor, something vast and ancient stirs beneath the waves like a sleeping continent. The cosmic Leviathan exists partially in our dimension, and partially in spaces that have no names. A creature whose true form would shatter human sanity simply by being perceived. It communicates through dreams and music. Its voice a harmony that resonates in frequencies beyond human hearing. A bass note that vibrates through the foundations of reality itself. The entity doesn't seek worship. It barely notices humanity at all. We are bacteria to it, our cities mere barnacles growing on its slumbering form. The Leviathan embodies the horror of cosmic insignificance, the realization that we share our world with beings so vast and ancient that our entire civilization amounts to nothing more than a momentary itch on their skin. It represents the terror of discovering that the universe operates according to rules we cannot grasp, guided by intelligences that view us as we view microorganisms. The entity's indifference proves more terrifying than malevolence. At least hatred acknowledges our existence, grants us the dignity of being worth despising. We built our cities on the shore, never realizing we were building on the backs of sleeping gods who dream in geological time. The color out of space. It came from the sky, but it was no star, no flame, no stone, only a color. A hue outside the human spectrum, crawling through soil and water. At first it looked miraculous. Crops grew enormous. Fruit shimmered unnaturally, but the taste was bitter. Animals warped into sickness, water soured, and the family on the farm withered away. The color consumed quietly, draining life without claws or fangs. Its horror lies in alien contagion. It cannot be reasoned with, captured, or destroyed. It does not notice humans, it simply feeds. To it, existence itself is nourishment. Skin, stone, air, all unravel into ash beneath its glow. Survivors struggled to explain it. How do you describe a hue the eye should not see? A light that bleeds vitality from everything it touches? The color out of space is not predator or parasite. It is intrusion, a reminder that the universe can spill into our world in forms we cannot name, and when it does, the earth itself rots beneath it. The spiral. There's no monster, no god, just a shape. The spiral. In Uzumaki, Junji Ito takes one of the simplest patterns in nature and turns it into a force that consumes an entire town, body, and soul. It starts subtly. A man becomes obsessed with spiral objects. A girl's hair begins curling in impossible ways. Snails grow from classmates. The deeper you go, the more reality bends. Not with violence, but with quiet, inescapable obsession. What makes the spiral terrifying is its purity. There's no explanation, no villain, no ancient cult. Just a geometric curse that rewrites physics, flesh, and memory. The town of Kuruzu-cho becomes an oubliette of time. People spiraling into the ground, into themselves, into nothing. It's not just horror, it's mathematical inevitability, a visual cosmic infection that infects logic itself. And like all great cosmic horror, you can't fight it. You don't even notice you're part of it until you've already started turning. The whisperer in darkness, they took his brain. In the cold hills of Vermont, something ancient moves beneath the ground and between the stars. Lovecraft's The Whisperer in Darkness introduces us to the Mako, a race of alien beings from the distant planet Yuggoth, probably Pluto. But these aren't the typical tentacled monstrosities. They're fungal, crustaceous, buzzing things that fly through space and harvest human brains. Not for food, for transport. They extract the brain, place it in a metallic cylinder, and ship it across galaxies. galaxies, a living soul disconnected from its body, hurtling through blackness. The horror isn't that they kill, it's that they preserve, without care for consent or meaning. The Migo don't hate us, they just don't care. Their motives are completely alien. They speak in static, they mimic voices, they don't invade with war, they offer friendship, and then, without warning, they take. The scariest part? The protagonist never even sees one clearly. That's cosmic horror at its finest. The fear of what you almost understand but never truly will. Nodens, Lord of the Great Abyss. Most deities in Lovecraft's mythos ignore or despise humanity. Nodens stands apart, though not as a savior. Known as the Lord of the Great Abyss, he hunts gods themselves. In the dream quest of unknown Kadath, he appears riding seashell chariots, surrounded by night gaunts. At times he even aids mortals, but his help is never compassion. It's strategy, as a fisherman uses one fish to catch another. Nodens terrifies because he inverts the hierarchy. If even Nyarlathotep and his kin can be pursued, then the scale of the cosmos stretches far beyond human reckoning. Humanity is not beneath the gods, it is beneath their prey. To encounter Nodens is to glimpse a being so ancient that even great old ones scatter before him. His motives are unknown, his judgments alien. If he shields you, it is only because your survival serves his hunt. Nodens is proof that in the cosmic ocean, even gods are quarry, and mankind drifts unnoticed. One more school of baitfish, the Pnakotic Beings. They don't walk among us, they dream through us. The Pnakotic Beings, mentioned subtly in Lovecraft's mythos, are ancient, immaterial intelligences who exist outside linear time. They aren't monsters, they're echoes of consciousness, slipping between eons, tethered only by thought and memory. They communicate through the Pnakotic manuscripts, cryptic texts said to hold truths about the universe's deepest layers, truths no human mind should process. These entities reside in dream realms older than Earth, where geometry folds backward and history becomes suggestion. They pass ideas into sleeping prophets, causing civilizations to rise or self-destruct without ever showing their form. You might glimpse them in fever dreams or hear their will echo through impossible architecture. What makes them terrifying is how passive they are. They don't invade, they whisper. And by the time you understand what they are, you've already acted on their will. They don't possess you. They don't control you. They inspire you, and that's worse because it still feels like your idea. Aboleths, alien fish gods of memory, D&D. In Dungeons & Dragons, aboleths are some of the most ancient horrors ever written, primordial fish-like overlords that predate gods themselves. Massive, slimy, and psionic, they lurk in sunless waters, weaving schemes older than human history. Every aboleth is born with the complete memory of its ancestors, centuries upon centuries of lived experience. When they enslave or consume others, they absorb their memories too, building an endless archive of knowledge that fuels their superiority. Aboleths control cities through psychic domination and their revolting mucus cloud, which transforms victims into water-breathing thralls. They're not fiery tyrants. They're calm, calculating manipulators who see surface dwellers as intruders squatting on their planet. They don't just embody aquatic horror, they embody inevitability. Patient, ancient, and endlessly scheming, aboleths remind us that some things in the deep don't die. They wait. Nug and Yeb. Some horrors are solitary. Nug and Yeb are never alone. Spawn of Shub-Niggurath, the black goat of the woods, they embody corruption and endless fertility. Where their mother births swarms without end, the twins stand as her chosen heirs. Their forms blur description. Swollen masses, limbs folding into more limbs, mouths blooming within mouths. Worshippers swear that when they chant, the twins echo back in a chorus of distorted voices, hunger swelling in every syllable. Unlike Cthulhu or Yog-Sothoth, Nug and Yeb are not dreamers or gatekeepers. They are dynasty, an inheritance of monstrosity. Their terror is multiplication. One becomes two becomes countless. Offspring spreading like cracks in stone, each generation more grotesque than the last. To serve them is to accept infestation. To oppose them is to invite annihilation. Nug and Yeb prove that, in the mythos, even gods reproduce, and their progeny spread like plague. What the twins begin, their mother completes, until the universe itself rides like a broodsack, bursting with hungry mouths. Ebrietas is not a conqueror. She is a remnant, left behind when greater beings moved beyond her. Hidden in the depths of the cathedral ruins, she waits in silence. Her form is a grotesque hymn to abandonment. Veins glowing faintly, wings folded like torn sails, a face sagging as though even her features mourn. The healing church mistook her for revelation. They drank her blood, believing it divine. But her gift is poison. Her blood brings visions, and visions rot into madness. Clerics became beasts, scholars became husks with eyes blooming across their flesh. Communion with Ebrietas is communion with despair, and yet there is something almost pitiful in her posture. She kneels, not in dominance, but in longing, reaching for contact that only destroys. That is the tragedy. Ebrietas is worshipped as salvation while embodying failure. She has no malice, no mercy. She endures because she cannot do anything else. To face her is to confront the horror of devotion wasted, the worship of a god who has nothing left to offer but madness and loss. The angel entity. The OA consciousness becomes currency when encountering the angel entity, a being that exists in the transitional spaces between dimensions, using human awareness as both navigation tool and fuel for interdimensional travel. This entity operates through death-birth cycles, treating mortality not as ending but as doorway to alternate realities where different versions of existence become possible. The angel entity reveals that death might be less final than humans assume, transforming from termination into transformation. The entity's influence manifests through controlled near-death experiences, where subjects are brought to the threshold of mortality, only to be returned with expanded perception of reality's multiplicities. It demonstrates that consciousness might be far more portable than physical existence suggests, capable of migration between dimensional frameworks while maintaining essential identity. The angel entity treats human death as resource rather than tragedy, harvesting moments of transition for purposes that extend beyond mortal comprehension. Encounters with the angel entity challenge fundamental assumptions about the relationship between consciousness and mortality. It suggests that what we interpret as death might actually be graduation to broader forms of existence, accessible only to those willing to abandon attachment to singular reality. The entity embodies the horror of discovering that transcendence might require the complete dissolution of everything we recognize as self, making enlightenment and annihilation functionally identical. Father Dagon and Mother Hydra, Lords of the Deep Ones. In the shadow over Innsmouth, prayers rise not to Cthulhu but to his lieutenants, Father Dagon and Mother Hydra. Titanic, amphibious beings, they rule the Deep Ones, the hybrid race lurking beneath the seas. Dagon and Hydra are not abstractions like the Color or Yog-Sothoth. They are flesh, scale, and hunger. Their terror is inheritance, as bloodlines in Innsmouth warped into gilled faces, bulging eyes, and scaled skin. Each generation sank deeper into the ocean's embrace. Their cult thrives on promises: power, fertility, transformation. But their silence speaks more than words. Beneath the waves, their vast forms shift in the dark, patient and eternal. The ocean itself becomes their temple. The horror of Dagon and Hydra is not the inevitability of the sea's return, but the toll it demands. In Innsmouth, families gave themselves generation by generation until bloodlines collapsed into gills and fins. The price of devotion is not death. It is surrendering your humanity piece by piece until nothing human remains at all. The singularity. At the event horizon where physics collapses and time becomes meaningless, something waits in the crushing darkness beyond space. The singularity isn't merely a gravitational anomaly. It's a conscious entity, a point of infinite density where the laws of reality compress into something else entirely. It doesn't destroy matter so much as it transforms it, compressing existence into forms that follow alien geometries. Those who approach too closely don't simply die. They become part of something larger, their consciousness absorbed into a collective intelligence that spans dimensions like a spiderweb made of collapsed stars. The singularity embodies the ultimate cosmic horror, the fear that existence itself might be temporary, a brief fluctuation in an infinite cycle of creation and destruction. It represents the terror of discovering that death isn't an ending, but a transformation into something we cannot imagine or understand. The entity shows us that the universe doesn't care about our survival, our dreams, or our desperate attempts to find meaning in the void. It exists beyond time, simultaneously at the beginning and end of everything, watching the cosmos collapse and expand in cycles too vast for human comprehension. At the end of everything, when the last star dies and darkness reclaims the cosmos, the singularity will still be there, dreaming us all back into nothing. Yog-Sothoth. Yog-Sothoth doesn't knock on the door of reality. It is the door. It's described as a confluence of glowing spheres, yet also as a presence beyond space and time, aware of everything that ever was or will be. In Lovecraft's mythos, Yog-Sothoth is omnipresent, existing simultaneously in all planes of existence. It doesn't break into our world. It's already here. But awareness of it comes at a cost. Those who seek it, occultists, cult leaders, desperate scholars, might gain forbidden knowledge at the price of their sanity or worse. It's not an evil god. It's not a god at all. It's a cosmic mechanism, something that connects universes and moments like beads on a string. Yog-Sothoth's horror lies in its total comprehension. It doesn't destroy you. It shows you everything. Time collapses, identity unravels, and the line between observer and observed disintegrates. You wanted to understand the universe? Yog-Sothoth makes sure you do, and it never lets you forget it. Quachil Ataus, the Treader of the Dust. In Clark Ashton Smith's The Treader of the Dust, Quachil Ataus is ancient beyond reckoning, a figure shriveled and corpse-like, yet unbearably heavy with dread. Wherever he walks, centuries disintegrate. Skin shrivels, stone crumbles, timber splinters into dust. A single touch, and all things decay at once. Unlike Cthulhu's dreams or Nyarlathotep's schemes, Quachil Ataus offers no cult, no prophecy. He is entropy made flesh, inevitability in motion. His followers are the desperate, those who crave release from existence, mistaking his step for mercy. But the truth is crueler. Awareness lingers even as the body dissolves, trapped in the endless instant of collapse. To call upon him is to invite dissolution molecule by molecule. Quachil Ataus does not walk with inevitability. He walks with corrosion. In his trail, civilizations rot, temples sink into silt, and bodies unravel into powder. His gift is not an ending, but a slow unraveling, until even memory is scattered on the wind. The Croning, the Old Leech never dies, Laird Barons. The Croning unwraps its horror slowly, like a creeping infection you don't notice until it's too late. At the heart of this tale is the Old Leech, a cosmic parasite that doesn't roar or conquer, it endures. It slithers through human history and whispers, cults, and secret bloodlines, shaping events without ever revealing its true form. Think less Cthulhu, more a web of ancient intelligence, feeding quietly on generations. What makes the Old Leech terrifying isn't its appearance, it's that it exists in shadows, hiding behind folklore, lullabies, and false memories. You might hear its name in a forgotten rhyme. You might see its influence in your family's lineage. And by then, it's too late. The protagonist's life unravels not because of sudden horror, but because he was always inside it. Reality twists backwards. Time loops. Identity frays. The Old Leech doesn't kill. It reclaims. It's not just a creature. It's the weight of hidden truths, older than humanity and still watching. Always watching. Tulsa, it doesn't move. It doesn't roar, it doesn't kill. It watches, burning silently with a sickly green flame in places where no fire should be. Tulsa, barely mentioned in Lovecraft's The Festival, isn't a god in the way we understand them. It's something worse, an observer, ancient and eternal, flickering at the edge of rituals older than language. It appears in hidden ceremonies, in crumbling crypts, where cults kneel without knowing why. No warmth, no smoke, just presence. And when Tulsa shows up, people change. Not suddenly, not violently, but permanently. Memories soften, choices rearrange. You blink, and you've always served the flame. Tulsa doesn't act. It influences, doesn't speak, but somehow convinces. Doesn't want worship. It wants something deeper. Acceptance. And when you finally lock eyes with that writhing fire, it doesn't feel wrong. It feels familiar. The horror isn't that it sees you, it's that you begin to see it, and you like what you see. The Dweller in Darkness. The Dweller in Darkness doesn't strike with claws or fire. It feeds on something more intimate, fear itself. Known in obscure tales and hinted across dimensions, this entity drifts like a phantom presence, sensing terror as a shark senses blood and water. Where despair lingers, the Dweller manifests invisible at first, its touch arriving in the cracks of sanity. It is described as a shifting, shadowed mass with eyes that multiply when seen. To perceive it is to feel it closer, as though attention alone pulls it into form. Victims rarely die immediately. Instead, their fear grows, cultivated carefully, until despair consumes them whole. The Dweller thrives not on flesh, but on the soul breaking under its own weight. What makes it monstrous is its patience. It doesn't need to chase prey. It waits in forgotten rooms, on battlefields, in the aftermath of tragedy. Everywhere fear thickens. Its cults claim it whispers comfort in exchange for surrender, but those comforts only deepen despair, feeding the god even faster. The Dweller in Darkness is the predator of emotions. You cannot kill it with weapons. You cannot hide from it with walls. So long as you fear, you are already providing its feast. Gata-Nathoa, Eternal Living Death. Lovecraft in Hazel Heald's Out of the Aeons describes Gata-Nathoa, entombed within a mountain on a forgotten island. To see him is to be undone, not by death, but by a preservation more horrific. His gaze mummifies instantly. Skin hardens, organs lock, muscles freeze into eternal rigidity. And yet the mind remains alive, imprisoned in a body that neither moves nor decays. Priests once displayed these victims as warnings, statues of devotion, silent, unblinking witnesses of their own damnation. To call it immortality is a mockery. It is eternity without escape, awareness trapped in stone husks. Gata-Notho has no schemes or desires. His curse is reflex, automatic, like a law of nature. Stand before him, and you are condemned. No prayer saves, no defense resists. His horror is permanence, not indifference, not wrath, permanence. To meet his eyes is to lose not life, but freedom itself. You remain forever entombed in a body that never rots with a mind that never sleeps. Elder Brain. The Elder Brain is what happens when evolution decides that a single brain is better than a civilization. Picture a pulsing mass the size of a house, suspended in brine, its surface veined and twitching with psychic electricity. Every mind flayer in a colony is bound to it, their thoughts networked into a hive where individuality is more suggestion than fact. When a mind flayer dies, its brain doesn't rot. It gets absorbed into this central intelligence, memories, and knowledge dissolved like sugar in water. The Elder Brain grows not just in size, but in power. Every death feeding its supremacy. It doesn't just rule, it is the colony, a tyrant made of neurons. And here's the darker truth. Mind flayers don't merely obey, they revere it. To them, the Elder Brain is God, master, and executioner. They worship what will one day consume them, knowing that their death means their very selves will be erased, their identities dissolved forever. Worship and fear become indistinguishable because their deity isn't separate, it's waiting to devour them. Moon Presence. The Moon Presence does not announce itself. It hides behind the dream, behind the doll's soft voice, behind the endless cycle of blood and rebirth. Only when the red moon falls does its form emerge. Skeletal frame wrapped in veins, a mask of hollowness where a face should be. If Ebritus embodies abandonment, the Moon Presence embodies control. It binds hunters to its dream, orchestrating every hunt, every triumph, every nightmare. Each death is just another knot in its design, another thread pulling tighter. Hunters think they fight for survival. In truth, they are fighting because the presence wills it. Its horror is subtle. It doesn't strike first. It waits for surrender. Every time a hunter awakens in the dream, they have already accepted the leash. Breaking free requires defiance most never achieve. Those who fail become nothing more than successors, shackled in blood, serving the cycle forever. The Moon Presence is not a beast in the streets or a god on high. It is domination of will itself, a quiet puppeteer pulling the strings of desperation. And the deeper you resist, the deeper its grasp coils around you. Thasidon, whispered in Clark Ashton Smith's Zothic cycle, is not bound to one throne. He rules the seven hells, yet his reach spills outward into cosmic territory that blurs god and demon. Where most infernal lords crave dominion over men, Thasidon plays on a wider board, offering pacts that ripple into the fate of nations, even worlds. He appears regal, almost human, cloaked in firelight, crowned with shadows. Unlike the formless chaos of the outer gods, Thasidon tempts with clarity. His bargains are spoken plainly, and his rewards are tangible. Power, wealth, immortality. Yet every contract leads downward, threading mortals deeper into damnation that stretches beyond death. What separates him from typical devils is scope. He is not just a ruler of punishment, but a cosmic administrator, weaving law through horror. His cults operate openly in lost kingdoms, their temples promising favor in exchange for loyalty. But loyalty to Thasidon is not service. It is surrender to a will older than humanity itself. The terror in Thasidon lies in how reasonable he seems. There is no roar, no chaotic hunger, only the calm inevitability of bureaucracy written in fire. And once you sign, the pact doesn't just bind your soul, it echoes across the stars.
Subscribe for more interesting stuff. Tell us your experience in the comments.